Before we begin, if you want to see more real-life horror, mysterious, and spine-chilling stories like this, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so that every new video comes straight to your phone. Now, let's dive into today's terrifying story.
I never believed in anything supernatural until the winter I moved into a small rented room in Flagstaff, Arizona, a room that looked harmless during the day but turned into something else entirely when the sun went down. I had taken the place because it was cheap, close to my night shift job at a gas station, and because I thought I didn't need much to sleep, just a mattress and a locked door. But on my very first night there, I learned that a locked door means nothing when something isn't coming from outside, but from the other side of a mirror. The bedroom was simple, a twin bed, a wooden dresser, beige walls, and a tall, antique mirror built directly into the wall behind the head of the bed. The landlord told me the mirror couldn't be removed because it's part of the frame, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. But every person who walked into that room paused for a second, stared at the mirror, and said the same thing: why would anyone put a mirror there? I didn't have an answer then. Now I do. The first night, I went to bed around 7 a.m. after my shift. I remember lying on my stomach with my head turned slightly to the right, staring at the blank wall. I was just drifting into sleep when I heard it, a soft, slow dragging sound, like a long fingernail pulling down cold glass right behind my skull. I froze. My mind tried to make sense of the noise, maybe a branch outside, maybe the house settling, but the window wasn't behind me. Only the mirror. I tried to ignore it, but once you hear a sound in total silence, a sound that shouldn't exist, you don't sleep, you wait. You listen. You pray it doesn't happen again. But it did. 3 more times, each dragged slower and closer to where my head rested. I didn't turn around. I don't know why. Maybe I sensed that if I acknowledged it that first night, something would fully notice me back. Over the next few days, the dragging became tapping, delicate, rhythmic taps on the glass. Like someone drumming their nails lightly but intentionally. Always when I was trying to sleep. Always behind my head. I considered moving the bed, but the room was so small that the only wall it fit against was the one with the mirror. Besides, I didn't want to look directly into it. Not after the 4th night, when I woke at 3:14 a.m. to whispering. It was faint at first, like a faraway conversation muffled by walls, but over several minutes it grew clearer. 2 voices. One deep. One high. But the high one wasn't human. It was thin and sharp, like metal scraping across metal but forming words. I couldn't understand the language they were speaking, until the deep voice said a single, clear sentence in English: "He hears us." I stopped breathing. The whispers cut off instantly, like they realized they'd been caught. The room fell silent, except for my heartbeat pounding so hard I could feel it shaking the mattress. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it behind me, blinding myself as I spun around. Nothing. Just the mirror. Cold. Harmless. Dead. Except it wasn't dead. The next time the mirror changed was around 2 weeks later. I had just come home from work at nearly 5 a.m., exhausted, half dizzy from lack of sleep. I tossed my keys onto the dresser, walked past the mirror, and caught something out of the corner of my eye, my reflection. But it wasn't copying me. It stood perfectly still, facing forward, while I walked across the room. It stayed frozen even as I turned my head to stare at it directly. Then, half a second later, it snapped back into sync, like a video that lagged before catching up. I stood there for minutes, unable to move, barely able to breathe. I finally lifted my hand to touch my cheek, just to confirm I wasn't hallucinating from exhaustion. My reflection lifted its hand too, but not at the same time. It moved slower, smoother, almost thoughtfully, like it wanted to mimic me but not too quickly, in case I noticed again. That was when the fear became something physical, something heavy that lived inside my chest and whispered that the mirror wasn't just a mirror. It was a window. And something was on the other side. something learning, something waiting. That night, I slept with my back toward the bedroom door instead of the mirror, curled up tightly, my eyes wide open, staring into the dark. When the tapping started behind me, it wasn't soft anymore. It was impatient. It was angry. 5 sharp taps. Pause. 5 sharp taps. Pause. Then a long, slow drag of something across the mirror that vibrated through the wall and into my spine. I had never felt pain from sound until that moment. The dragging wasn't just noise, it carried pressure, like something pushing through from the other side. I covered my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound wasn't coming through the air. It was inside my head. Eventually, the dragging stopped. But something new began. Breathing. Slow, deep, heavy breaths, so close behind me I could feel the warmth on the back of my neck. I remember shaking uncontrollably, tears rolling down my face, my body refusing to move because something primal inside me knew, if I turned around, I wouldn't be looking at a reflection. I'd be looking at it. The breathing lasted nearly an hour. Then it stopped, but only after the mattress dipped behind me, as if someone, or something, pressed a hand onto it. I didn't sleep again that day. Or the next. By the 3rd day of exhaustion, I convinced myself I was imagining it all. Sleep deprivation, stress, too much caffeine, there were 1,000 excuses I tried to believe. But they all collapsed the moment the thing in the mirror followed me outside the room. The first time I saw it was in the back window of my car. I was driving to work at dusk, the sky orange and fading, when I glanced into the rearview mirror and saw a shape sitting upright in the back seat. It was tall. Thin. Too thin. Its neck was bent at an impossible angle, like it was trying to keep its face hidden from my direct line of sight. I slammed the brakes so hard I nearly slid into the ditch. The shape vanished instantly, as if the jolt made it blink out of existence. But I noticed something else. The mirror behind my bed at home had a tiny crack running down the side, one that hadn't been there before. Like something had pushed too hard trying to get through. That night, I covered every reflective surface in the house, bathroom mirror, TV screen, window glass, chrome doorknobs, everything except the giant built-in mirror behind the bed. I couldn't cover that one. It was too large, too deeply embedded. The landlord said it was part of the wall. I was starting to think it was part of something else. 3 days later, I made the mistake of entering the bathroom without remembering I'd removed the mirror cover to shave that morning. I turned on the light, lifted my head, and froze. My reflection wasn't there. The sink, the shower curtain, the tile, everything was in the mirror except me. Then, slowly, my reflection stepped into the frame from the left side of the glass. Its skin was grayish. Its eyes were too dark. Its mouth hung open just slightly, wide enough for me to see that it didn't have teeth. Just a black, empty space stretching backward far too deep. And then, without the lips moving at all, it whispered in a voice that sounded like wind blowing through a corpse's throat, "He is almost through." My screams didn't make it move. It simply watched me as if studying how fear worked. And then it smiled. A slow, spreading smile that stretched wider than any human mouth should be able to. I stumbled backward and ran out of the bathroom so fast I nearly fell down the stairs. I didn't return to the room for hours. When I finally walked back to the bedroom, the mirror behind the bed had a second crack. And something on the other side was breathing. I barely slept after the second crack appeared in the mirror. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that slow, heavy breathing pushing through the glass, as if something gigantic was leaning forward with its forehead pressed against the other side, waiting for the moment the barrier finally gave way. I shifted to sleeping on the living room couch, but even then, the house didn't feel empty anymore. There were times when I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and swear I heard footsteps coming from upstairs, my room, slow, dragging footsteps that didn't match the rhythm of any human step I've ever heard. Almost like something was testing each movement, like it was adjusting to having weight, to touching the floor, to being here. The worst part is that the landlord didn't believe any of it. When I called to ask if anyone had reported strange issues with the room, she laughed and said the last guy who rented it left suddenly. No notice, no explanation, no forwarding address. She thought he skipped rent. But now I think he ran. I tried to leave too. I packed my bag after another night of whispers crawling out of the walls, every voice closer than the night before. I remember grabbing my keys, walking down the stairs, and reaching the front door. My hand tightened around the doorknob, but I couldn't turn it. Not because it was stuck. Because the moment I touched it, the house fell so silent that it felt like the air had been sucked out of the walls. Something was waiting. Not outside. Behind me. I felt a presence at the top of the stairs, a pressure, like a shadow watching with hunger. I didn't dare look. I simply let go of the doorknob and backed away. That night, I slept in my car outside the gas station. But even there, it followed. At around 2:46 a.m., while the store was empty and the roads were dead, I walked past the front freezer door and saw it, my reflection again, except it wasn't copying me. Instead of walking, it was standing perfectly still inside the glass, leaning forward against the other side as if pushing its face up to the freezer window. And its eyes, they were wide open this time. I don't know how long I stood staring at it. Maybe minutes. Maybe longer. But the moment I blinked, the reflection blinked too, but not normally. It blinked sideways, like a reptile shutting membranes. I quit my shift early that night and sat in my car until sunrise. I didn't want to go home, but I didn't know where else to go. When I finally returned, every window in the house was fogged from the inside, even though it wasn't cold. And on the glass of the living room window, drawn with a single finger, were words, "Stop leaving." My stomach dropped so fast I nearly collapsed. Something didn't just want me in the room. It wanted me inside the house. It wanted me near the mirror. I should have run anyway. I should have ignored it, gotten in my car, and driven out of Arizona. But I was exhausted, scared, and losing my grip on reality. Fear messes with your logic. It convinces you that maybe listening to something unnatural is safer than disobeying it. So, like a fool, I stayed. That evening, I went back to my bedroom for the first time in days. The moment I opened the door, the smell hit me, cold, metallic, like blood left out in freezing air. And the mirror, it had changed again. The two cracks were wider, jagged, bending inward like something had clawed at the glass from behind. I stepped closer, even though every cell in my body screamed not to. The reflection didn't look like my room anymore. The angle was the same, but the space on the other side was darker, too dark to be a simple reflection. The carpet was gone. The walls were blackened, burnt-looking, like soot had spread across them. And far in the back, something moved. Not a shape. A shadow. A shadow that slid across the floor like smoke crawling downhill. Then it rose. Tall. Taller than me. Taller than the mirror. Its limbs were long and crooked, like branches bent the wrong direction. And its head was the shape of mine. But stretched. Twisted. Like clay pulled too far. Its neck jerked left, then right, as if cracking bones that didn't belong to it. Then it leaned forward until its face filled the mirror. I couldn't see features. Just darkness. And then, in a voice that vibrated through the walls, it whispered, "Let me see the rest of you." The light bulb in the room burst. Total darkness swallowed everything. I stumbled back, tripping over the bed frame, my hands scrambling across the floor. The shadows didn't feel like shadows anymore, they felt solid, brushing against my arms, climbing the walls, sliding across the mattress. When I finally got the door open and fell into the hallway, the light from the corridor exposed something horrifying, the mirror wasn't reflecting the hallway. It was reflecting my back, even though I wasn't facing it. I ran downstairs until my legs nearly gave out. I stayed awake for nearly 40 hours after that, too terrified to close my eyes. But lack of sleep does something to your mind, it makes the world bend. I started hearing knocks in the walls. Then whispers in the vents. Then breathing beneath the floorboards, following me from room to room. On the second night without sleep, I walked into the kitchen to drink water and noticed something was off. The window above the sink showed the backyard as usual, but my reflection wasn't in the glass. I leaned in slowly, praying it was just the lighting. Then, faintly, my reflection stepped into frame again, exactly like the bathroom incident, but this time, it wasn't alone. A hand, long, thin, gray, clawed, rested on its shoulder. The hand tightened, digging in. And my reflection smiled as if enjoying it. I dropped the glass I was holding. It shattered across the floor, and the sound must have startled whatever was behind the mirror because the reflection jerked violently, like something had pulled it backward. I didn't dare go closer. I slept in my car again. That night, but even there, it didn't leave me. At around 3:21 a.m., the rearview mirror began to fog from the inside. Slowly, words appeared, "Come back to bed." My entire body went numb. I started shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. The fog spread across the dashboard, the windows, the windshield, until my car looked like it was filling with cold breath. Something was inside the car. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. But I felt it. Sitting behind me. Leaning close. Watching. I didn't go home after that. I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town, paid cash, and locked myself inside a room with no mirrors. Only then did I fall asleep. But the nightmare followed me. I dreamed of the mirror cracking open like a doorway. I dreamed of long, gray hands sliding out, feeling for me. I dreamed of a mouth whispering my name over and over in a dry, papery voice that scraped against my bones. When I woke up, my phone had a notification. A picture. Sent from an unknown number. It was a photo of my bedroom mirror. Taken from inside the room. And in the reflection, lying asleep on the motel bed, was me. I stared at the photo until my vision blurred, my hands shaking so violently the phone nearly slipped from my grip. The angle of the picture was impossible. It was taken from inside my bedroom, facing the mirror where the cracks had spread like veins, but the reflection didn't show my old bed or the walls I knew. It showed the motel room. The exact motel room I was sleeping in. The same brown curtains. The same cheap lamp. The same thin, scratchy blanket pulled halfway up my chest. The timestamp on the photo was 3:06 a.m., 27 minutes before I woke up. Something had been watching me sleep. Something that could see me through any reflective surface, no matter where I ran. I tried to calm myself, tried to convince my brain that maybe someone had broken into the motel, snapped a picture, and left. That would have made more sense. That would have meant this was still a human threat. But what human can take a photo from inside a reflection? I didn't sleep again that night. Every time I blinked, I saw that cracked mirror in my mind, saw those darkened walls from the other side, saw the shape with my stretched, twisted head lurking behind the reflection. By morning, I checked out of the motel and drove around with no destination, hoping sunlight would make me feel less hunted. It didn't. At a red light near a strip mall, I caught movement in my side mirror. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was a passing car. But when I turned my head, I didn't see traffic. I saw a face pressed against the side mirror, my face, but pale and hollow, with blackened eyes and lips split open as if cut with a razor. The jaw hung loose, swinging slightly with the breeze. The mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. Then the face slid sideways out of the mirror like melting wax. I swerved so hard I almost hit a pole, earning a furious honk from someone behind me. When I looked back, the face was gone. I drove to the only place I thought might make sense, a church. On the outskirts of town, old and empty-looking but with its doors open. I don't know why I chose a church. I stopped believing in anything divine years ago. But fear makes you irrational. Fear makes you pray to anything. Inside, an old priest sat alone in a pew with his hands folded. He didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, the moment I stepped inside, he whispered, "You've brought something with you." The breath drained from my lungs. I asked him what he meant, but he simply gestured for me to sit. His hands were trembling. His eyes, milky with age, avoided looking directly at me. "Mirrors," he said quietly. "Some of them aren't reflections. They're invitations." I froze, my mouth going dry. "Invitations to what?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "To the ones who imitate. The ones who watch. The ones who want to replace." The room felt suddenly colder. He continued, his voice breaking slightly. "There are old stories, older than this town, older than the country, about creatures that mimic faces from behind glass until they learn enough to step through. They wait for a crack, a weakness, a moment when the barrier thins." My heart pounded so loudly I thought he could hear it. "Can I stop it?" I asked, barely forming the words. He looked toward the door behind me, his face draining of color. "It's already inside." I turned slowly. The glass pane on the church door had fogged over. A handprint, long, distorted, with too many joints, pressed from the other side. The priest grabbed my wrist and whispered, "Leave. Never return to your room. Never look into that mirror again." I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted out of the church, sprinted to my car, and peeled away so fast the tires screeched across the asphalt. But as I reached the main road, I felt something shift in the air around me, a pressure, like a storm building behind my ears. I glanced at the rearview mirror, even though I told myself not to. My reflection was there. But it wasn't sitting like I was. It was leaning forward. Its hands were pressed against the inside of the glass, palms flat, fingers splayed unnaturally wide. The eyes were black pits. And its mouth hung open in a silent scream that vibrated the mirror. Cracks formed across the reflective surface, spiderwebbing outward. I slammed the mirror upward so I couldn't see it. I should have ripped it off entirely, but panic makes you sloppy. I drove for hours with that pressure building in the car, the feeling of something breathing softly in the back seat. When I finally stopped at a rest area, I didn't dare check the mirrors. Instead, I walked to the bathroom sink and splashed cold water on my face, keeping my eyes focused on the tiled wall. But curiosity kills more than cats. Against my better judgment, I lifted my head a few millimeters, just enough to glimpse the very bottom of the mirror. Just a sliver. Just enough to see the reflection of my shoes. Except they weren't my shoes. They were bare feet. Gray. Long standing inches behind me. Slowly, careful not to scream, I lowered my head and backed away from the sink without looking. I left the rest area immediately and didn't stop driving until I reached a small abandoned ranch house outside Winslow. I broke in through the back door and collapsed on the dusty floor, curling into myself as the sun set. For the first time in days, silence filled the air. No whispers. No breathing. No tapping. It was almost peaceful, until I realized the house didn't have mirrors. Not one. Not even a shard of reflective glass anywhere. As if someone had deliberately removed them. As if they'd been running from the same thing. In the dark, I found the previous tenant's notes, a stack of crumpled papers shoved under a loose floorboard. Most of them were unreadable scribbles, but a few sentences stood out clearly. It watches through reflections. Do not sleep near glass. It becomes you. If the third crack appears, it's too late. My stomach twisted. My mirror already had 2 cracks. I don't remember falling asleep, but exhaustion eventually dragged me under. I dreamed of a corridor made of mirrors, floor, walls, ceiling, stretching endlessly in all directions. I stood barefoot in the center, surrounded by infinite versions of myself, each reflection twisted slightly differently, one taller, one smiling too wide, one missing its eyes, one crawling backward on broken limbs. Then, one by one, the reflections stepped out of the mirrors. Not all of them. Just the ones that weren't fully human. I woke gasping. Morning light filled the ranch house, and for a brief moment, I thought the nightmare was just a dream. But then I felt something cold on my cheek. A fingerprint. A long one. As if someone had touched my face while I slept. I ran outside, desperate, panicking, thinking maybe the sunlight could burn it away, could stop it. But the world outside was worse. Every car window, every storefront, every shiny surface I passed showed not my reflection, but the cracked bedroom mirror. No matter where I looked. One surface. One image. One doorway. The mirror behind my bed. It had chosen me. Or maybe I had already been chosen the moment I moved into that room. I realized then that I couldn't hide. I couldn't escape. The only way to stop it was to go back, to face it directly, to destroy the mirror before the third crack formed. Before it came through fully. Before it replaced me. So I drove back to the house in Flagstaff, shaking the entire way, feeling the presence behind me grow heavier with every mile. When I reached the street, the house looked different, darker, as if the windows had been blacked out from inside. My hands trembled as I opened the front door. The air inside was cold enough to bite. And from upstairs, I heard a familiar sound. Slow. Dragging. Long fingernails scraping across glass. It was waiting for me. The night I finally understood what the Jinn wanted was the same night I realized there was no escaping it because it was not tied to the mirror, it was tied to me. I had driven nearly 14 hours without stopping, leaving Arizona behind like a spreading infection I was trying to outrun, but when I reached a motel in rural Nebraska, exhausted, dehydrated, and barely coherent, the air in the room felt exactly like my old bedroom in Flagstaff, heavy, thick, charged with a static that made the hair on my arms rise. I hadn't brought the mirror with me. I hadn't even brought most of my belongings. But the moment I closed the motel door behind me, I felt a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle shift that made me realize something had arrived before me, something that had never stayed behind in that room at all. I collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, too tired to think, but as soon as my eyes closed, I felt a sharp, cold pressure against the back of my neck, as if an invisible fingertip was pressing into my skin. My body locked in place. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't dreaming. I could feel the weight of the motel blanket on my legs, feel the vibration of a truck passing on the highway outside. But I couldn't move. The paralysis didn't come gradually, it slammed into me like a force that had been waiting for me to be still, waiting for me to lie in a position where it could touch me again. I sensed movement behind me, impossibly close, as if a face was hovering just an inch from my skull. Then I heard it, a whisper that wasn't breath, wasn't voice, wasn't human. It slid into my ear like oil, cold and thick, as if the sound itself had weight. I followed you. My heart punched against my ribs. My throat spasmed, desperate to scream, but no sound escaped. The whisper came again, slower this time, stretching the words like they were alive. You brought me with you. The thing pressed closer, and I felt the faintest texture of a face against the back of my head, not skin, not flesh. But something smooth and shifting, like cold smoke trapped inside a thin membrane. You looked at me, it said. That is all it takes. My vision blurred even though my eyes were open. I could see only the wall in front of me, but it was vibrating, pulsing, as if reality itself rippled from the presence behind me. I tried to focus on my breathing, tried to remind myself that paralysis wasn't death, but the Jinn's voice crawled into my mind like a root burrowing into soil. "Do you understand now?" it whispered. "Mirrors are doors. But doors open both ways." The paralyzing force suddenly lifted, and I rolled off the bed, hitting the floor hard enough to bruise my ribs. I scrambled backward until my shoulders hit the motel dresser. My breaths came in short, broken gasps, but the room was still. Empty. Silent. The air felt normal again. Too normal. And that was somehow worse. I stood up slowly, moving toward the bathroom because I needed water, needed light, needed something normal to anchor myself. I pushed open the bathroom door, and immediately stopped breathing. The motel had a simple rectangular mirror above the sink. But someone, or something, had dragged a long nail or claw across the surface from corner to corner. 5 deep scratches cut into the glass like it was soft clay. The grooves were fresh. Tiny fragments of glass dust glittered along the sink. I stumbled backward, shaking uncontrollably. The Jinn didn't need the original mirror. Any mirror was enough. Any reflective surface. Anything that showed even the faintest outline of my face. I left the motel within 3 minutes, throwing my bag into the car and driving without looking back. I drove through the night, past fields, past silent farms, past gas stations I was too afraid to stop at. By dawn, I crossed into South Dakota. My eyes burned from exhaustion, and my throat tasted like metal, but I kept going. I thought maybe if I outran it long enough, daylight would weaken it. But at a rest stop just outside Rapid City, I went into the bathroom to splash water on my face. The mirror above the sink was perfectly clean. Untouched. Normal. For a moment, I felt stupid. Delusional. Like everything that happened was some kind of sleep-deprived hallucination. I leaned closer to the mirror. And the reflection leaned closer to me, but a half-second too late. My stomach dropped. I stepped back. The reflection didn't. It stayed exactly where it was, staring at me with eyes that weren't mine. Its pupils were too large. Its expression was too still. Too patient. Then, very slowly, the reflection lifted its hand, even though I hadn't moved, and placed its palm against the inside of the mirror. A thin, black crack spread from under its hand like a spiderweb of ink. My body refused to move. The reflection tilted its head, studying me with the same cold curiosity I had felt in that room in Arizona. Then its mouth stretched into a smile, too wide, too sharp, and it whispered without sound, "You are the mirror now." I stumbled out of the bathroom, nearly collapsing as I pushed the door open. I got into my car and drove again. I didn't look into mirrors for the rest of the day. Not the rear-view mirror. Not the side mirrors. Not my phone screen. And still, every reflective surface I passed, windows, puddles, polished metal, seemed to flicker at the edges, like something on the other side was waiting for me to slip. That night, I parked behind a truck stop and tried to sleep in the back seat, but the moment I closed my eyes, I felt tapping, soft, rhythmic tapping, on the rear window beside my head. Tap. 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 I kept my eyes shut. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. Then it stopped. The silence lasted for maybe 10 seconds. Then a voice, my voice, whispered from the other side of the glass, "Let me in." I opened my eyes to absolute darkness. But in the black reflection of the window, a face watched me from the other side. Not the Jinn's face. My face. Twisted into something that didn't belong to anything human. I turned away, shaking, and the voice came again, closer this time, whispering from inside my own skull, "You looked at me once. That is all it takes. Now I will show you what else you can see." I don't remember falling asleep. But I remember waking up the next morning with the horrifying realization that the Jinn no longer needed mirrors to reach me. Its whisper echoed inside my head no matter where I looked, no matter how far I drove. I write this now from a library in Minnesota, choosing a tablet screen with the brightness turned down so low I can barely see my fingers. I avoid reflections. I avoid anything that might show even the faint shape of my face. But earlier today, as I passed a window between the bookshelves, something moved behind the glass. Not a reflection. Not a shape copying me. A hand. Pressing out from the inside of the window. I don't know how long I have before it crosses completely. I don't know where I can run that doesn't have reflections. America is full of glass, windows, screens, mirrors, water, metal. Perhaps that is why it followed me so easily. Perhaps it always belonged here. If you are reading this, if you hear anything behind your head when you're near a mirror, if your reflection lags for even a single heartbeat, don't look again. Don't give it your attention. Don't acknowledge it. Because once you see it, once you recognize that something is there, it knows you can see. And once it knows that, you become the door. Thank you so much for watching the entire video. And to get more videos like this, please like and subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon beside it. Thank you.